I grew up conservative, Pentecostal, Christian, like a Republican household, right? And so the world was presented to me in a very specific way. And then when I started experiencing the world, I was like, something is different, right? This is not how I was taught the way things are. And I do think that can be very scary for people, right? To grapple with that the fact that something you believe in is hurting someone else. It's almost like sometimes when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, your best friend is an abuser, and you're like, wait, no, could not that person, not the person I get ice cream with, not the person that's been there for me when I've been sick and right? We're never taught how to process a change.
True.
And so for some of us, that first reaction is to tamper it down, is to break it, and to see it like as a threat. But I do think that sometimes you have to take a step back and figure out, is the information that you're being presented with somebody's reality? And if it's somebody's reality, how does it gel with what your perception of it is? And then is the intent of that person to harm you or to let you know what's going on? Because I've said, no one knows what the best solution is going to be. But like, if someone is telling you that apartheid is happening, instead of denying it, why can't you sit there and say, okay, what steps do we need to take to reduce this injustice? I was talking to a friend and they are Jewish, and they were like, you don't even understand. It's not even Jewish Israelis who have rights. It's conservative Jewish Israelis who have rights, because I'm not considered conservative enough. So there are some rights that I don't even have as an Israeli citizen. And so these are the questions, the conversations that we have to engage and talk about, because like even here in the United States, we all as citizens have rights, but yesterday a citizen was killed in Lebanon and no one said anything, right? A couple weeks ago, a U.S. citizen was killed in Palestine, and the U.S. was like, hopefully Israel will, investigate. We trust them.
Yeah, we haven't
to
heard
do that,
nothing
right?
else about that.
We have U.S. citizens who are being held by Hamas, and every single day someone from the United States government mentions their names and talk about why we have to be engaged in this war, because U.S. citizens are being held, but the ones that are being killed, the ones that are being held in Israeli detention, we don't talk about that. So even our own system of government has an apartheid system. Even our own system of government picks and chooses which American lives has value to them. So while we're critiquing at home and we're critiquing abroad, it is the same critique, because again, none of these governments are really, and I put this in a post yesterday, is like, they're not fighting for us.
Right.
These governments are like basically fighting. It's like a circle jerk with like all these people like, I'm more powerful than you are. My bomb is bigger than yours. My missile is, whatever. And that's what they're fighting. They're fighting each other to see who is more powerful, who can get other proxies to do things. They're not fighting to see who can feed their people the best, who has the longest longevity within their community.
It's funny, those countries, it's like you don't really hear about them. You don't really hear about like Norway or like Sweden and what they're doing. I mean, and unless like a clip goes viral where they're like, this is the jail, and you're looking like, damn, that's better than my apartment that I pay thousands of dollars a month for. Like, what the hell?
Facts.
And so a lot of times those countries that are peaceful and focus on like the quality of life of their own citizens, you don't hear about them because they're not trying to bomb or force their ideology on that. And then, Farouk touched on it. Those stories that get told, it's often about like what your race is, what your religion is. So we're often taught to like put ourselves in the shoes of like poor rural white people. How are they feeling? What? Remember the whole after January 6th is like, oh, but let's consider their feelings, and they feel like disenfranchised and they feel like their voices don't count. And that's always the case when it comes to, if it's a white school shooter, but he was bullied, he was picked on, he had this disease, this didn't go right in his life. We're always given that. But when it is, I haven't seen a long form interview of a Haitian immigrant talking about what's happening and what's going on and how this is hurting them. What's the effect that it's having on Haitian community families? So I haven't seen that. So those stories don't get told.
And I think a large reason why those stories are omitted from this narrative is because they're saying the quiet part, out loud. We don't view you as part of the American experience.
1,000%. You don't have Western values.
You don't have Western values. You do not fit into what we view as an acceptable portion of our culture. Therefore, your voice is irrelevant, and we are going to render you null and void in this conversation of Americana.